I'm your host, Laura Gowers, a global dyslexia assessor, coach and strategist, and a former Senko with over 23 years experience in education. This podcast is a space for honest, real-life conversations around dyslexia. The late discoveries, the relief, the frustration, and the clarity that comes from finally understanding how your brain works. Join me and my expert guests for real-life conversations that matter. This is Dyslexia and Me. Today, I'm joined by Maddy Alexander-Grout, a multi-award-winning entrepreneur, disability advocate, and money and business coach for neurodivergent people. At the heart of Maddy's work is a powerful message I know will resonate. Hello, Maddy, and thank you so much for joining me today.
So welcome. Thanks for having me.
So let me just ask you, could you start by telling our listeners a little bit about your own story?
Yeah, of course. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Maddy Alexander-Grout. I am an ADHD money and business coach. And my story basically starts from about the age of 15. I started to have quite bad money problems when I was younger. I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until I was 37 years old. I'm now 42. I got my dyslexia diagnosis when I was about 7. But it took quite a long time to get me the dyslexia diagnosis because the teachers in my school just thought I was blind. What didn't help was that I really wanted glasses. So I basically fudged all of the things anyway. And they were like, she's just reading completely the wrong letters because I really wanted glasses. So they gave me all the stuff. I got the glasses, still couldn't read off the board. So I got my dyslexia diagnosis pretty early, but that was after a lot of people had called me stupid. A lot of people had not given me the support that I needed. So I ended up moving from a private school where you would have thought they would give you more attention and help you a bit more to a normal state school. And this was quite early on, so the fact that I knew I was neurodivergent from an early age, but I had no idea that dyslexia, ADHD, autism, and actually I have the full fruit bowl of neurodivergents. I've even got mild Tourette's. So I don't talk about that much because people notice my tics when I tell them I've got them. But it's been a bit of a journey. So I found out that I had ADHD at 37. It made my entire life make sense. When I got my ADHD diagnosis, my psychiatrist actually said to me, you know you're autistic as well, right? And I said, nope, I am not autistic, not in any way, shape or form. And then I had to go back to her because as soon as I started taking my ADHD medication and the ADHD was kind of unmasked, I was like, oh, hello, autism, there you are. You've been sat there for a while. I'm also dyspraxic. I have dyscalculia, dysgraphia. My journey has been very much up and down. I've struggled with money for most of my life. I have a spending addiction, which still rears its ugly head every now and again. That started about the age of 15. I went to university, got myself in £40,000 of debt because my dopamine basically was saying, hey, feed me. So I bought lots of stuff, didn't really think about the consequences, very, very impulsive. And then when the letters started coming, like dyslexia, I don't like reading letters. So I just piled them up. They stacked up by my door and it took a long time for me to realise that actually I did need to pay it off. So I became somebody who was really, really good with money. I think ADHD helped me with that. It was the hyper focus. And then I ended up getting into debt 10 years after I'd been debt-free for a second time and for a completely different reason. Trained as a neurodiversity coach, business strategist, and now my main aim in life is to help neurodivergents to understand their brains better, in particular when it comes to money and business.
Wow, thank you. That's such a journey that you've been on. I think some people don't quite realise how all of the neurodivergent conditions link together. And quite often, if you have one, you are very likely to have at least one or several others.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in my case, I have all of them, which is very, very fortunate. But actually, I'm not the sort of person that, I'm definitely not in the ADHD and autism are superpower camps. Like, I really think that they are disabling conditions and they have so many bad points, but they do also have some good points, and the good points that put together, they make my personality, and my personality is my superpower. That's how I see it.
I think that superpower thing comes up so often. I have so many people message me because I really don't think that it is a superpower,
No.
dyslexia.
Oh,
I
God,
think
no. Dyslexia is the most disabling, I think.
Yeah, I think it really minimises the difficulties that people have. And so many people get quite frustrated that in the media there's this talk about dyslexia being a superpower. And I think, yes, there are so many strengths that you can have as a dyslexic person, but that doesn't make your dyslexia a superpower.
It really doesn't. You know, we have to take so much time. I genuinely think I would make a lot more money in my business if I didn't have such bad task paralysis over reading emails. I've got thousands of unopened emails because I look at them and I'm like, oh, people have written to me, I have to read that. But one of the hardest things ever for my dyslexia was actually writing my book. That was such a challenging thing for me to do. But when I wrote my book, I wanted to make sure that as a dyslexic person who would want to read my book, that it is written in a way that the people who are dyslexic can read it. So the colour of the page, the size of the font, the spacing. My book, whenever people get my book, they're like, that is the biggest book I've ever seen. It is literally the size of a Yellow Pages, and that's because it's dyslexic friendly. You could read it if you're a 4-year-old. My 4-year-old's tried, and I'm like, don't read that, it's too many swear words.
With dyslexia, there are so many ways that we can make reading a bit easier, and those things like having it printed on buff type of paper, the layout of the text, that spacing is so important, and people who aren't dyslexic might not realise that, for example, if letters are written all in capitals, it's quite difficult to read. And people who write in that sort of cursive or deliver training and put all these fancy looking fonts in there that all look very pretty.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult for anybody who is dyslexic to be able to actually read those.
It really is. And they don't understand that nuance for people's brains. So like whenever I do my training, I'm always make sure that it's dyslexic friendly. People also get dyslexic friendly handouts and stuff afterwards. But because I'm trying really hard to be inclusive and help people, because I know how much I struggle, that takes me so much more time as well. We're sometimes just in this battle with like, how much can we actually do? And then that also sometimes becomes a bit of a task paralysis for us.
I can understand how that would be really difficult. And just that time element of everything, because when you do focus on having voice recordings alongside the written information too, it's all just adding more tasks for you to do.
Yeah. And this is why I love video content so much, because it's me being able to use my voice, which is actually, as a dyslexic person, being able to use our voice. We learn from a very young age how to be articulate because we struggle with that written communication. So for me, video is like my favourite thing. Editing subtitles, not so much. But I always make sure that my videos have all got subtitles on them so that people can read and listen at the same time, because I think that really does help.
Yeah, I hear so many people saying that as well. If you have those subtitles, you can really read, listen, it takes it in. It's a different way to process that information. Yeah. So can you share a little bit about how dyslexia has shown up at different points across your life?
Yes. So I really struggled in primary school. I couldn't read off the board. I couldn't read tests. I struggled to read out loud. Reading out loud was like the most embarrassing thing for me. You know, when the teacher says, stand up and read this, and you're just like, not only do you have that stage fright, that instant panic, but actually when I read, especially out loud, I mix up my letters, I mix up my words, I miss words out. I'm actually a really good reader, and I think that's a common misconception that people who are dyslexic just don't read at all. I read, and actually I'm an avid reader, and I was from a really young age, and I read way above my reading years. But it's because of the fact that my brain processed the information really fast because of my ADHD. Understanding them, I had to go back and then reread pages and, go through things again, because I'd get to a part in the plot and I'd be like, I don't understand why that's happened. It's because I skipped something. So I had a bit of a love-hate relationship with reading. And then when I got to university and I discovered boys and alcohol and things like that, kind of reading kind of took a bit of a back seat. And then when I struggled with my lectures, with reading instructions. I was doing media studies, and there was reading the small print on scripts and things like that. That was really difficult for me. So it showed up quite a lot there. But the biggest thing, and I've spent the last 9 years being self-employed, has been my self-employed journey, because as a dyslexic entrepreneur, it's difficult because you are expected to reply to emails. You're expected to read contracts. You know, my debt for the second time actually ended up as a result of me not reading a contract properly. There was some small print at the bottom that was really, really, really small, and it said personal guarantee on it. And during the pandemic, I took out a lot of finance to try and support my business because it really wasn't going particularly well. And after the pandemic, when it still wasn't going particularly well, I had to dissolve the company. And that small little sentence that I missed, personal guarantee, meant that I ended up in £65,000 worth of debt again for the second time. So it has really shown up. If you've got multiple neurodivergent conditions, money is hard enough as it is, but things like budgeting, doing tax returns, collecting invoices, all of those kind of things require that level of administrative attention, which I don't have because of the ADHD, because of the reading and all of those things. And I think my confidence was massively knocked from a young age because I did feel like I was different to other people, you know, and there was that, well, if you're dyslexic, you know, you can't be that intelligent. Well, actually, that's completely wrong.
There's a statistic there that up to 1 in 3 entrepreneurs have dyslexia. Now, most people won't necessarily know that they have dyslexia because I think there is that misconception that people think it is about you can't read or you can't spell, but actually it's those nuanced things that you said about the reading that it might take you longer to read. You might skip words, you might find it really difficult reading aloud, but actually when you can read in your own mind, it's not as difficult.
And now with the day and age of voice notes, I love it when somebody leaves me a voice note on Instagram because you get the captions. So you can listen and it also transcribes it for you as well. So you can listen and read at the same time. I'm fine with that. But if somebody leaves me a voice note, especially as I'm really time poor, I have to listen to it on like ×2 or whatever so that it goes faster, and people have started leaving 10-minute voice notes. I mean, what's that all about? But I can't unless I can see the words and hear it at the same time. Like, I watch all of my films and all of my programs with subtitles on. I have to. But people think, doesn't that make it more complicated because you're dyslexic? And I'm like, no, because I've also got auditory processing issues. And my brain will process what it thinks it wants to process, and I need to be able to read it at the same time. So there are so many difficulties, and I think the one thing for people to understand and to know is that no brain is the same. So you might have dyslexia, but your dyslexia might show up in a different way to somebody else's. It's not a black and white. It's not a one size fits all. And that's the same with all neurodivergents.
So how do you think dyslexia affects areas like money management for the people that you work with in business?
Yeah. So I think from a money management perspective, things like budgeting, a lot of dyslexic people are also dyscalculic as well. And that means that numbers are quite hard for people. You don't necessarily have to have full dyscalculia to struggle with the numbers. It can just be looking at numbers on a page and seeing them the wrong way around. That can cause really big problems when paying bills. People can pay a bill and it might not be the right amount, or they could overpay, forgetting to pay bills, reminders, sending letters if you need to communicate with people like electricity, being able to actually formulate what you want to be able to say to them in the best way, that's quite difficult. And I do find that when it comes to money, even using tools like ChatGPT can get things wrong sometimes, and then you're sending something which isn't necessarily the right letter. Complaining, things where you have to be able to communicate in a written form, that's quite difficult. But also when it comes to things like reading contracts, I am very, very lucky that I now have somebody who actually analyses my contracts for me. Because if I'm left to my own devices to look at contracts, I will just sign them. And then I sign my life away. And I sign them because it's like, oh, that's just too much. Can't read it. And then I get myself in trouble because of the terms and conditions. So there are so many different ways that dyslexia can show up for entrepreneurs. It's basically every single way that we communicate. But then there are also some really great positives. So we're very creative. We're great at using our voice. We're good at speaking. We're good at negotiating. And we spot patterns that other people might not necessarily see. And we have very analytical brains. So all of those things can be really good positives in a business environment, also in a money environment. But I think getting to know how your own specific dyslexia affects you helps you to understand where your money problems or your business problems will come.
There's really quite an element of actually trying to figure it out yourself. And sometimes that must be hard for people to be able to know where to look and to know what to do first. And it is a bit of trial and error. And I guess it's making sure that you are educated on different ways of how things work. I know you've got a membership, haven't you?
I've got a couple of places. So I've got a free community, which is called the Maddyverse, which is essentially a group for neurodivergent people away from social media, because I find that sometimes people feel pressures to show up on social media. There's no pressure in my community at all. There's loads of resources, templates, there's a discount platform, lots of tips and advice, and you can ask questions, and basically anytime anybody asks me anything, I'm around to kind of answer that. So that's the free community. And then I've got a paid membership called the Core. And then I've got a core wellbeing, which is basically like the next level up. So the core is centered around neurodivergent business owners. It's all about strengthening your core, whatever that means to you. So it could be strengthening your money situation, your wellbeing, your personal stuff like relationships, but also it goes into how you run your business in a way that works for you and your brain. And that's £10 a month. Just I had a little thought that popped into my mind as well, just along the communication line. Another way that dyslexia can show up for business owners is when somebody sends you a text or a message, if you read it wrong, you can read the tone wrong, which can cause problems with people like suppliers or business partners or clients. Miscommunication, if you've written something and you've missed something out and they expect something from you.
So for any listeners that feel shame around money, what do you want them to understand about how their brain works to reduce that shame?
So I basically say to anybody that is ever in my world, you're not bad with money, you're neurodivergent. And we see things differently. We operate in a different way. We're living, and sometimes I hate this and sometimes I love it at the same time, but we are trying to navigate our lives in a neurotypical world. I don't think it's a world that wasn't built for us, because I think that we can build our own destiny. And actually, when we know and understand our brains, we can use that information to be able to make our lives better. But when it comes to money, so many people get stuck in that mindset of I'm bad with money. There is no such thing as bad with money. There's either you're not doing it in a way that works for you, which is why you think you're bad with it, or you're learning. And when you start telling yourself that you're learning to be better with money, then you're kind of almost opening yourself up. I'm quite a spiritual person, so you're opening yourself up to that abundance. Energy and money are very connected. So if you are constantly telling yourself that you're bad, you kind of will be bad because you're attracting that energy in. And if you start to analyze your money situation, what is it specifically that you are bad at? Because it's probably not all areas of money, but it's kind of understanding where your patterns are. Emotions very much come into money, no matter what sort of brain type you've got. So we spend money when we are sad, when we're happy, when we're bored, when we're feeling emotional. If we're a woman, like maybe we've come on our period. But analysing and working out where in the month you have those types of things. I used to have cravings all the time. I would literally crave spending money. I would walk to the shop to buy toilet roll just so I could spend. And that's when you know you've kind of got a bit of a problem. So are you really bad with money, or are you just not working out a way where it works for you?
That reframe and that reflection sounds a really important element for individuals to do.
You can be better with money until you reframe it, because if you start trying to do money in a way that, say, for example, Martin Lewis tells you to do it, like, I mean, I don't know a neurodivergent person who goes, Martin Lewis is the best person in the world. He's done amazing things for this country, but he talks really fast. He doesn't explain things in, like, neurotypical people will go off and they'll be like, right, cool, I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to budget, I'm going to save, I'm going to invest, all of those things. Whereas neurodivergent people will be like, how do I do that? Where's the practical? Can you tell me how to open the app and where to put my money in pots? Because I don't know how to do that. So I think there are ways where you can start to improve your money situation, but you can't do it until you understand the ways that your brain kind of processes that information. And that's why learning from somebody who has experience dealing with neurodivergent brains really works. And, I would very much recommend for anybody who feels like they're bad with money or feels like they don't have the right control over their money, to read my book. It's called Mad About Money, Managing Finances and Life with ADHD. It's not just about ADHD. I talk about dyslexia. I talk about all of the neurodivergent conditions and the way that they present. And it's also not a boring book at all. It's sweary, it's funny. It's basically about all of the mishaps that happened in my life before I understood my brain. And there were a lot of them. I was basically a walking ball of chaos. So it's quite a fun book. And as I mentioned before, it is dyslexic friendly as well. It's not just dyslexic friendly, it's written with dyslexic people in mind. So if you read the Amazon reviews, like I have people who are like, I've never, I haven't read a book in 10 years or whatever. And they sit down, they read it cover to cover in a couple of days because it is that easy to read. And there's also like sections where if you don't want to read the story, you can just pick out the tips. So they're very easy to kind of just pick out.
So an extremely well thought out layout. And you speak about both practical finances and emotional well-being within that book.
Yeah.
So why was it important to you to bring those two together rather than just treating money as a purely logical topic?
Boring as hell. Like even like as a money specialist, I mean, I'm technically more of a business coach than I am a money specialist now. But, I keep my hand in it because it's what the press know me for. It's what like a lot of my audience know me for. I hate money sometimes. Like, the reason I called my book Mad About Money, A, it's a play on my name, but B, it's because it makes me really cross. It makes me mad. It makes me feel like I'm absolutely deranged and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So it does make people mad. And when you are trying to learn something in a way that works for your brain, if I'd have kept it like every other boring finance book out there, people wouldn't have read it. The reviews wouldn't be raving. People wouldn't be like, this is one of the best books I've ever read, because it would be seriously boring. Now, the way that I've written it, for anybody who follows me, like you'll know that I'm very sweary. I say what I think, like I'm very opinionated and also at times quite funny. So if I had something that was really boring, I don't think it would have matched me or my personal brand. So the thing that has made this book noticeable is me knowing my audience well enough to know that if I've written something boring, nobody would pick it up. And I know my audience well enough to know that the audiobook is so very desperately needed, but I'm having arguments with my publisher about it. So I'm sorry, it will come eventually.
And you've spoken about a little bit about personal brand there, because your personal brand is really clear to see, and whatever platform people go on, wherever they see anything about you, they can really see that personal brand there, which is amazing. So congratulations on doing that so well. And you've had a lot of press over the past year.
I have.
Some of it I would imagine has been quite difficult to manage.
Do you know what? Like the first week of January, it's almost my sickfluencer anniversary. I should start talking about it more. It was the first week in January and there was an article about me. One of my friends phoned me and they said, Maddy, you're on the front page of the Telegraph. And I was like, what? I do a lot of press stuff anyway. So I was like, I don't remember talking to anybody about a story. What's going on? So I looked it up and it was like sickfluencer. And I was like, what is a sickfluencer? That sounds like horrible. So apparently a sickfluencer is somebody who persuades people that they are disabled in order to claim money from the government. Now, they had picked up on one of my videos talking about access to work and how if you're a disabled business owner, you can access funds to help you to survive in your business. It's never about growth. You don't physically get the cash in your pocket. It is all about helping you to come up with systems and processes that help you to run your business effectively so that you can essentially make as much money as a neurotypical person, because we have those barriers in front of us. So the press kind of latched onto me a little bit from that. I was raging because I was like, first of all, like, they're going to ruin my career. This is horrendous. All I do is I help people to get the money that they are entitled to when they are disabled. And I went through all my things. I was like, have I ever told anybody like how to pretend to be disabled? Like, no, obviously not. So that was a real shock. It was really hard for me. And within half an hour of that happening, somebody phoned me and said, they're talking about you on LBC. And I went, what, are they just talking about ADHD coaches? They were like, no, they have mentioned you specifically by name. So anyway, I phoned in LBC, and without even thinking about it, without any preparation, I went on with Nick Ferrari in the morning. Nick Ferrari, for anybody who doesn't know, is the most right-wing, aggravating, angry man. I have to say that in a nice way. He is basically the worst person you'd ever want to go on with. And he was basically like, ADHD doesn't exist. I've been on LBC 9 times, I think, in the last year as a result of that interview. There have been several points. I think it's like, we're slow news day. What are we going to do? We'll go and find Maddy the sickfluencer again and we'll throw her under the bus. But what they don't realise is that every time they throw me under the bus, they grow my audience significantly. They get me opportunities. They get me radio things. They get me like all sorts of attention from the right people. Yes, of course, I get trolls. Like, I've got a bit of a rule. If I wouldn't send somebody a Christmas card, then like, I don't really care if they want to slate me online. It's not really a problem. I have developed a really thick skin over the years. You kind of have to. But the press calling me a sickfluencer was probably the best thing ever. Even now, I'll go on I went on LBC on Monday to have an interview about something which was all about workplace culture and stress in the workplace. And they still were like, hey, Maddy Alexander-Grout, ADHD money and business coach, who has been dubbed a sickfluencer every time. So I'm like, do you know what? If they want to give me that label, it makes me well known to people. It helps me with my personal brand, because I even had T-shirts that had, I'm not a sickfluencer, I'm a disability champion written on them and printed out. You've got to take all these opportunities, and sometimes PR isn't the nicest. The thing is, I think for neurodivergent people, like one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about visibility for neurodivergent people is it's very different for neurodivergent people to show up and be the face of their business. It's very much about knowing and learning what you can and can't do, because psychological safety is really important. I have learned where I'm psychologically safe, when something is going to be good for me, when it's not going to be good for me. LBC asked me to go back after the sickfluencer thing to have an interview in the studio with live questions. And I thought, I'm just not going to do that, because it puts me into a situation where I can't prepare for what people are going to be asking me. I can prepare for what the presenter's going to ask me really easily, but the actual people in the audience, like, I don't want to put myself into a situation where actually I feel really scared. So visibility is hard. Doing social media is hard. Doing content, showing up and doing press stuff, like speaking, all of those things. And that's why I run my program, Amplify Your Influence. It's all about helping neurodivergent people to show up in a way where they feel safe. Their messaging is sorted. They know how to sell. They know what they're selling. They're completely in control. And they're not doing things because they think they should do them because other business coaches have told them they have to do it that way.
What small shifts can make the biggest difference for dyslexic people when it comes to managing money or running their business?
So body doubling, I think, is an absolute game changer for anybody who is, especially the body doubling that we do in the Maddyverse. So if you join the core, we do Monday morning body doubling sessions, which are 2.5 hours long, where I am there and you can ask me questions. So if you get stuck on anything, I can jump on a Zoom with you. I can go through your finances and help you with things. I think one of the biggest things that people get really stuck on to start with is actually looking at their bank statements, because it's a load of numbers, it's a load of lines, it's a load of cognitive decision making that you have to kind of manage. So if you can get an app like Plum or Snoop or something that actually analyses your spending so that you can basically get tailored feedback on it, something that can really help. Color coding, reminders. So I set reminders for everything. I am an absolute pro at getting parking tickets. Literally the best. I think I have probably a collection. Like, I just forget. I forget that I've paid to park. I go over the time. I park in the wrong place. I don't read signs. I have so many bus lanes. I don't notice that they're there. I don't read the signs. Like, I think it's just genuinely a problem. So if I get something like that, I have to put it in my diary. I almost know when I'm going to get something now. So I'm like, expect a letter from the parking people. So it's about working out what you need to remind you to do the things. I have a money date every month with my husband where we sit down at the beginning of the month. We both kind of say like, hey, this is my salary for the month. This is what we need to pay. Who's going to pay what? What are we going to pay? What's left over at the end? What does that need to be spent on? I find pots in my bank account super duper useful. So I've got pots for basically everything. I've even got an ice cream pot for the summer so that if the kids say to me, Mummy, can I have an ice cream? I know that it's budgeted for. Before pots, I was awful, like terrible at budgeting. Like, the thing is, when you have an ADHD brain, when you have dyslexia, when you are neurodivergent in any way, it's kind of important to find things that work for you, set your own rules, because if you are trying to manage money like anybody else, like literally like anybody else, you're not going to do it, because we have to find the things that work for our own brains.
Yeah, I find using pots really useful. And there are so many bank accounts that allow you to do that quite easily now as well.
I'm with Starling and I absolutely love Starling.
So if someone is listening and is starting to realise that maybe dyslexia could be behind some of their years of financial stress or self-criticism, confidence, etc., what would you try and encourage them to do as a priority?
Start. Like, I know that sounds really easy, but you're never going to know how you can improve something if you don't look at where you are right now. Starting is the hardest part because we procrastinate, we put things off, we think, it's future you problem. So we almost don't necessarily look at it. But sitting down, looking at your bank statements, actually not being scared of money. Money is a commodity. It's a thing that we exchange for other things. Like, it has so much power over us in terms of mental health and well-being and relationships and all of the things that we do in our lives. We're in a very much a capitalist society, which doesn't help. But you're not stupid if you've got dyslexia. You can sort your money out. Again, it's about that mindset shift and noticing where your patterns are. And we're blooming good at spotting patterns. So if we can spot where those patterns are and where we're down, like where our downfalls are, then that's really going to help us work out which part you're struggling with, because it's not going to be all of it. There's going to be some things which are going to be positive, and finding those positives is going to help you to take those next steps.
If you can try and reflect and actually pinpoint the elements of where you feel your weaknesses are, where your strengths are, and then start from that as the first point. And then once you start reflecting on one thing, it goes out, doesn't it? The circle increases and you start to look at other areas.
And also, if you do something wrong, don't put shame and don't berate yourself for it, because we're human. Like, you might start off and be right, I'm doing this. I'm actually, I'm saving, or I'm paying off my debts and it's going really well. And then something happens, and don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you do something wrong, it's the same with a diet. If you're on a diet and you accidentally eat a whole packet of custard donuts, I don't know from personal experience, but you don't then go, screw it, I've lost everything, I'm just going to go and eat all of the takeaways and go to Cosmo and just shove everything I can into my mouth. Just start again. It is going to be a learning process. You're not going to get it really quickly. It's going to take time. And when you have consistency and when you are finding those patterns and you start out, think of it like a new routine. Routines are quite hard for people who are neurodivergent, unless you're autistic and you really thrive in the routine that you've got. Changing anything is difficult because it's a habit that you have to stick to. Make your budget fun. if you can make your budget fun, as in, like, you know what you've got left over at the end of the month and what you're spending that money on. So, you know, for me, I love buying hair dye and eyelashes and things for my kids, you know, squishmallows. Love a squishmallow. But it's about conscious spending rather than being impulsive. And if you can flip that switch to making a decision about the things that you're spending on. So, for example, it's not just like, I'm going to buy a holiday, I'm going to go to Mexico. It's, I want to go to Mexico. I'm going to save £200 a month for the next year so that I can go to Mexico, and it is an informed and educated decision. That's where we want to be.
It's also about managing those expectations that habits take a while to form.
They do. And they take 3 times longer for neurodivergent people than they do for neurotypical people.
So we cannot expect, it's not realistic to think we're going to get the habit, we're going to pick it up from day one.
No. It takes time, and you have to find the way that works for you. So I could teach people all of the things that I know, but they might not be right for their brains because, again, you know, as we've said before, everybody has a different brain. So it's not about telling yourself that you can't do it. It's about finding a way that you can do it.
So thank you, Maddy. This has been absolutely amazing talking to you. I know that it's going to be really useful to a lot of our listeners. So finally, can you just tell everyone how they can connect with you?
Yes. So I am the most visible person on the planet everywhere. So Maddy Alexander-Grout on Facebook, LinkedIn, Maddy Talks Money on Instagram, Mad About Money Official on TikTok. I am on Substack. I have 7 followers. Don't really know what I'm doing there. Also, my new website is going to be ready very soon. But at the moment, if you go and find me on any socials, you'll find my stand store in there, which has got all of my links, all of my freebies. Like, there's loads of templates and stuff. Come and join the Maddyverse and hang out there.
Definitely get the book.
Thank you for having me on.
You are very welcome. Lovely to talk to you.
So I've got a masterclass as well, which is a free one. It's for any neurodivergent business owner. And it is on the 29th of January at 8 p.m. And it's called From Invisible to In Demand, Why Your Content Isn't Working, and it's not because it's bad. It's all about audience growth, content creation when you're neurodivergent, because there's a lot of things that do go into creating content when you're neurodivergent that we don't necessarily think about that could be holding us back.
It will be amazing, and hopefully lots of business owners will sign up for that because hugely valuable to any neurodivergent person.
Thank you. I hope so.
I hope that you've enjoyed listening to Maddy's story. All of the links are in the show notes, so please go and check her out. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in to today's episode. Please don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast, and I'll see you all again next time.